The tragic assassination of right-wing podcaster and activist Charlie Kirk was an event that sent shockwaves across the political spectrum, especially the MAGA movement. In the aftermath, a newly emboldened administration under President Donald Trump is using the tragedy to consolidate power and curb free speech, citing national security and the need to restore order. In Los Angeles County, a local chapter of Moms for Liberty in Santa Clarita organized to distribute copies of the U.S. Constitution to school children, framing it as an educational initiative. Yet, in the same breath, the organization advocated for stringent measures against teachers in classrooms, accusing them of speech violations for content deemed inappropriate or divisive. This dual approach, championing one form of speech while seeking to suppress another, underscored a growing tension in the country. Listen to Moms for Liberty leader Tina Desowich talk about how she believes that teachers are celebrating the death of Charlie Kirk in the classroom.
So the assassination of Charlie Kirk has been awful, but it has brought to light the things we've been talking about. And it's been very hard to watch people that we should respect, classroom teachers, for example, celebrating an assassination in the United States of America in the year 2025. People have been shocked. They can't believe that some of these people are teaching in their schools and in their classrooms. But in one sense, I'm glad it's finally coming to light. But these teachers need to be exposed, because you have an absolute right in America to be a horrible person. You have an absolute right to speak horrible things. You have an absolute right to say that you are celebrating the death of our friend. But that does not give you the right to access our children in a classroom for 8 hours a day. That does not mean that we have to use our tax dollars to pay your salary for you to be a horrible person in front of our children and try to teach them your horrible, hateful ways. And so at Moms for Liberty, we are continuing the fight.
Because while championing the First Amendment for themselves, the organization Moms for Liberty and its allies have been waging an aggressive campaign against the freedom of speech for others, specifically for the teachers inside these classrooms. This campaign was laid bare in a recent hours-long live stream broadcast to a national audience. It was called Failure Factories: Breaking Free from the Tyranny of Public Education. Hosted by Moms for Liberty member Scarlett Johnson, the event was a blistering assault on teachers' unions, a primary target for the GOP, and on the entire institution of public education. Throughout the broadcast, the rhetoric moved beyond policy disagreements into outright political warfare, framing educators and their unions as direct political enemies of the Trump administration.
To work, they're not prepared for college. They're not prepared for life. This is the bitter fruit of a system run by Randi Weingarten. I'm going to say that again. This is the bitter fruit of a system run by union bosses like Randi Weingarten. This is the bitter fruit of systems run by organizations like the NEA, which have a federal charter, and they should not have enough homework. Oh, we don't want to do homework. It's like, I think that they don't want us to see what our kids don't know. They don't want us to watch our kids write the worst paragraph of, like, see Dick run. Like, what the heck? That's not a paragraph. That's like a few, like, 4-word sentences. Where's your thesis? Where's the paper? Why can't you write cursive? Why can't you spell? They are overrepresented in education. So even though 80% plus of normal people that are going about their life don't want to have a boy in a girl's locker room, when you're talking about a school district like in California, unfortunately, 80% do. They, again, the woke craziness is overrepresented in education. This is the space in which we live. And that's why if you think it's not happening to my kid, you are wrong. They're just not telling you, or you're not asking the right questions. It is happening to your kid at some level, maybe not some insane level where they're putting a boy in a bathroom, but they're talking about it. They're talking about gender identity. They're slipping this in. It's in, the calls coming from inside the house. It's just in the well of this system. And so we have just begun to fight back, and there's a lot of wins, a lot to be excited about, but there's a lot more battles ahead.
The message was unmistakable. Teachers are not just educators, they are adversaries. Public schools are not institutions of learning, but battlegrounds. This grassroots pressure, amplified by a national platform, creates the justification for the administration's broader crackdown. It softens the ground, portraying public servants as a threat that must be controlled. President Trump, leveraging the grief and fear following Kirk's death, initiated a crackdown on what they believe to be enemies of the state and anyone saying anything contrary to the Trump administration's narrative. The Justice Department, under his watchful eye, began to target political opponents and critical media voices. In the last week alone, the offensive against dissent has accelerated on 3 fronts. First, the public front. Administration officials, including Vice President J.D. Vance and White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller, have encouraged the public to call the employers of anyone expressing views disfavored by the government. Second, the institutional front. Attorney General Pam Bondi has vowed to use every resource the Department of Justice and Homeland Security have to, in her own words, identify, disrupt, and destroy groups the administration perceives to be an enemy. Finally, the ideological front. The Attorney General provided the justification for these actions, claiming there's free speech and then there's hate speech, while issuing a direct threat, saying, quote, "We will absolutely target you, go after you."
There's free speech and then there's hate speech. And there is no place, especially now, especially after what happened to Charlie, in our society.
See more law enforcement going after these groups who are using hate speech and putting cuffs on people, so we show them that some action is better than no action.
We will absolutely target you, go after you, if you are targeting anyone with hate speech, anything, and that's across the aisle.
The ACLU issued the following statement, quote, "The government is villainizing and threatening to punish anyone who dares to express anything but unequivocal support for its political views. In the last week, lawmakers have bullied schools into taking disciplinary action against teachers who have criticized Charlie Kirk's political views. Police officers are being put on leave for similar reasons. Federal agencies are disciplining public servants for expressing views contrary to those supported by the administration. Journalists and the media companies they work for have also felt a McCarthy-like pressure from the government, with popular late-night hosts losing their jobs." End quote. The pressure campaign on the Department of Justice is no longer happening behind closed doors. On Saturday, President Trump took his demands public, venting directly at Attorney General Pam Bondi. On Truth Social, he wrote that the lack of criminal charges against his adversaries was killing our reputation, and demanded, "Justice must be served now." The post followed his firing of a U.S. attorney who didn't believe there was a case against Letitia James. Trump insisted, "There is a great case," and immediately floated a loyal White House aide, Lindsey Halligan, to take on the probes. The message was a remarkable public directive. A president linking his personal grievances to the prosecutorial power of the federal government, demanding action against his political enemies. These events stirred an unsettling sense of déjà vu, echoing a dark chapter in history. In 1933, the burning of the Reichstag building in Germany was exploited by the Nazi Party. Blaming communists and external agitators, Hitler's regime rapidly moved to suspend civil liberties, suppress opposition, and solidify its authoritarian grip on power, fundamentally transforming German society. In the past couple of weeks, the long-running late-night talk show Jimmy Kimmel Live was abruptly pulled from the air. The catalyst? A seemingly innocuous joke about the administration, which was deemed disrespectful and incendiary by government officials. The swift action against a prominent comedian sent a chilling message through the entertainment industry. Fortune magazine reported on the broad implications of this move, noting the potential for a wider boycott of Disney and its subsidiaries, including Marvel and ABC, by those outraged by the threat to First Amendment rights to free speech. The FCC had threatened to pull the broadcasting license for ABC if the network refused to comply. The events of 2025 served as a stark reminder of the fragility of democratic institutions and the constant vigilance required to safeguard free speech and dissent. In a nation grappling with division and uncertainty, the question remained: at what cost does security come when liberty is compromised?